Hi, welcome to Nikki's Veets. Here's my tweet. Practice does not make perfect in presentations. Too much is as bad as too little. 2 to 3 group rehearsals plus a final personal click-through will suffice. So this is based on 20 years of experience of coaching people in the bid process. What we find is practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. And so what happens is people have gone away and practiced their presentation over and over again and got it word perfect, in inverted commas, and then they come to us and we're like, yeah, but you're saying the wrong words and you're trying to do the wrong thing. And what we find is if you've learnt a script and you know exactly what you're going to say, there's a tendency for the script and the visuals to get separated, and you end up not getting dual encoding where you've got both sides of the brain processing the information. You end up with 2 tracks, basically a visual one and a phonetic one, and then what happens is they ignore the visuals and listen to the phonetic one. And then the other thing it does is it hamstrings the presenter's ability to react to the audience. So they can't change and modify based on the feeling or the vibes they're getting from the audience because they've got a script. And, you know, if you throw them off script, they get lost. So we think you can over practice. And if you over practice, you get to that point where it's now scripted and you're not thinking. And then people's performance drops. And what we found is, you know, we run a 2-day process before a major presentation, where they're going to stand up and win a major piece of business. And we found that if they go through it 2 or 3 times as a group, they get comfortable enough with their own material, they get comfortable enough with the way their material fits with the group as a whole gets comfortable with everybody's presentation. We talk about linking forward and referring back and interweaving it so it's all connected. Once 2 or 3 times through that, and that's enough. Any more, and then they start to kind of they start to overthink it, or they start to over practice it, or they start to get scripted and the performance drops off. And then what we want is one individual click through the night before so they can really think about how they're going to say it, how they're going to interact, how they're going to get to 4D, and then on the day stand up and on the day, just that little bit of adrenaline. Then if they know what happens next into their slides, their performances are usually really good. And if they've seen the whole thing 2 or 3 times, it's usually connected into the other pieces of the presentation. Whole thing works perfectly. The times where people have done 7, 8, 9, or in some cases 10 or 15 practices of the same presentation, they are much harder to coach, much harder to get a really good presentation out, because now it's started to become the same regardless of the situation. And that's not a great presentation because no 2 audiences are the same. And so every presentation ought to be tuned perfectly to the audience's response. So my advice is don't over practice your presentation, but for God's sake, don't run it live for the first time in front of the prospect. That's suicide. Bye.